Hey everybody, I'm Tim Mooney with the Timothy Mooney Repertory Theater. So today, I'm continuing with yet another of our series on Shakespeare's histories, on my way to explore all 10 history plays, this time with the third of the plays, Henry IV, Part 1. I perform portions of Henry IV, Part 1 as part of my one-man play, Shakespeare's Histories, 10 Epic Plays at a Breakneck Pace, which I'll be doing live online this Sunday and Monday, November 22nd and 23rd, 8 p.m. Central, 2020. You can catch it as part of a Pay Whatever You Want event on Facebook Live on Sunday, and for just $5 on Zoom on Monday. My plan here is to shine just a little more light into what may seem like a very tangled political web and perhaps give you a sense of just what Shakespeare might have wanted his audience to get out of that. So here's I Finally Get Henry IV Part 1. First thing that you need to know is that Henry IV Part 1 is really not about Henry IV. Henry IV Part 1 is about Henry V, and Shakespeare is clearly already working on that play. Actually, he started working on that play with the last one that we covered, Richard II, the first of what we know as a tetralogy, like, say, the Star Wars trilogy, but 4 plays, not 3 movies. What happened in Richard II that we need to know about for this play? Let me sum up just a couple of key items. 1. For various political and economic reasons, but mostly just because he could, Henry Bolingbroke essentially stole the throne from Richard II. Since Henry was essentially an usurper to the throne, there was a stain on his kingship. So Shakespeare is not so quick to make a big deal out of his title character. Shakespeare titles his history plays with whomever was king at the time, whether or not he likes them. 2 of especial help in Henry's insurrection were Henry Percy, the first Earl of Northumberland, his brother Thomas Percy, who is the Earl of Worcester, famous mostly for being called Saucy Worcester, and Northumberland's son, Henry Percy, also known as Harry Percy, but most famously known as Hotspur. In our video about Richard II, we discuss a prediction in that play that points out how this alliance to the Percy family will come back to bite Henry IV. You can revisit that prediction here. 3. Henry IV's son, yet another Henry, does not show up at all in Richard II. Henry's son was mostly called Prince Hal, and sometimes Harry. But with 4 Henrys in Henry IV, Shakespeare helps us to keep them all straight by using nicknames, surnames, and titles instead. 4. Prince Hal is only given a couple of sidelong references in Richard II, but Shakespeare hinted at the coming events as, during Richard II, King Henry asks, "Can no man tell me of my unthrifty son? 'Tis full 3 months since I did see him last. If any plague hang o'er us, 'tis he." So Hal is unthrifty and a plague. That's pretty cold. He's unthrifty because he has a habit of hanging out in taverns, carousing with low-life companions, including the fat, thieving knight Sir John Falstaff. Hal is a plague because of the real danger that hangs over their heads. If an unthrifty prince becomes king, all of Hal's bad traits will come back to haunt them. Because, after all, you never want an incompetent, malignant narcissist left in charge of the country, especially during a plague. Shakespeare didn't say malignant narcissist, but he might have if he had those words at his disposal. But of course, Shakespeare already knew that Prince Hal would go on to become Henry V and would have no stigma hovering over his reign for the overthrow of Richard II, as his father did. More importantly, Henry V will go on to win great honor as a hero of the Battle of Agincourt, the greatest battle of English history. So Shakespeare's audience really wants to know, how did Hal grow into such a great king, and perhaps just how honorable was he? Shakespeare is going to refract Hal's development through the use of a literary device that we call foils. I always assumed that the term foil stemmed from fencing. Turns out not so. It seems that in the practice of jewelry making, a jeweler would back a particular gemstone with foil, a shiny surface that would reflect the light more brightly through the facets of the gem. Thus, likewise, the facets of a character would shine more brightly when seen against another character who had similar qualities. Shakespeare never allows us to think too badly of Hal for too long. Hal participates in a robbery, but only to play a madcap, impish trick on Falstaff, and ends up giving the money back. And while he may hang out with ruffians, Shakespeare will always have Hal redeem himself with speeches like, "So when this loose behavior I throw off, and pay the debt I never promised, by how much better than my word I am, by so much shall I falsify men's hopes, and like bright metal on a sullen ground, my reformation, glittering o'er my fault, shall show more goodly and attract more eyes than that which hath no foil to set it off. I'll so offend to make offense a skill, redeeming time, when men think least I will." More than a literary conceit, Hal is consciously using his bad reputation as a foil, so that when he reforms, his reformed self will shine like bright metal on a sullen ground. Hal has two main foils. We've already mentioned Falstaff, who is essentially all play and no work, and there is also Hotspur, Harry Percy, who is all work and no play. You really have to appreciate just how far Shakespeare goes to turn Hotspur into a foil against Hal. And for this, and for much of my understanding of Shakespeare's plays, I pause here to credit Isaac Asimov and his book, Asimov's Guide to Shakespeare. It's out of print, but worth the effort if you manage to hunt down a copy. If you are only vaguely familiar with Henry IV Part 1, you certainly know that Hal and Hotspur, or Harry Percy, have a lot in common besides just their first name, and are of an almost identical age. How do we know this? Many references, including this Act 1 bit of ruminating from King Henry IV about his unthrifty son. It helps to know that King Henry was from the line of kings known as Plantagenet. Oh, that it could be proved that some night-tripping fairy had exchanged in cradle clothes our children where they lay, and called mine Percy his Plantagenet. So then we know, there they were in the maternity ward, right next to each other, and some night-tripping fairy changed the identity cards on the bassinets. Except, no, Harry Percy, Hotspur, was born in 1364. Hal's father, Henry IV, born in 1367. Percy was 3 years older than Hal's dad. Hal himself wasn't born until 1386. Hal was 22 years younger than Hotspur. You would never know this because Shakespeare throws out the real-life character of Hotspur in order to turn him into a foil. Hotspur and Falstaff both act as foils to Hal. And what distinguishes all three men from each other the most is when it comes to the notion of honor. Hotspur, all work, no play, and his work is to fight. In Hotspur's world, honor is built up cumulatively through victories in battle. Hotspur has already built up quite a reputation as a warrior and is just coming off a series of successful battles against Scottish forces along the northern border. King Henry and Hotspur are caught up in a dispute over several important prisoners that Hotspur has taken in these battles and refused to turn over. While many lower-class peasants would get killed in battles such as these, members of the nobility were more prized as prisoners that could then be ransomed home at a very steep price. So, tough luck if you're a peasant, I guess. Hotspur only turned one of his prisoners over to King Henry, but wanted to use the rest of them for his own profit, which would enable him, in turn, to ransom home his brother-in-law, Edmund Mortimer. Shakespeare rewrites history again, confusing Hotspur's brother-in-law, Edmund Mortimer, with that brother-in-law's nephew, Edmund Mortimer. That Mortimer, only 11 years old at the time, was actually next in line to the throne by way of his grandfather, yet another Edmund Mortimer. The King Henry IV, descended from Edward's fourth son, should not have been made king when he deposed Richard II. But, the rules of succession tend to take a back seat to the all-important, countervailing, long-held legal principle of finders keepers. Falstaff and Hal carouse together in bars and brothels. Falstaff would rather steal money than earn money, and steal honor than earn honor. And yet, we kind of love Falstaff. We overlook his vices, at least at first, because he's the only one who can keep up with Hal in terms of witty repartee. Repartee, a word actually borrowed from fencing. And while it's all fun and games for Falstaff, when the wars come about, Falstaff's inability to take it seriously takes a sinister turn. Falstaff is given a large sum of money to hire a company of 150 fighters to bring to the battle against Hotspur. Rather than rounding up a hardy company of tough soldiers, he scrounges up a company of ragged, pitiful rascals. When Hal complains of their condition, Falstaff insists, food for powder, they'll fill a pit as well as better. In other words, regardless of how the battle goes, these men will end up at the wrong end of the gunpowder being shot at them, and will get thrown into a mass grave. Tough luck if you're a peasant. As lovable as Falstaff is, his antics at best lack compassion. So, everyone is off to the war, and Shakespeare reveals Falstaff's disposition on the major theme of honor as he soliloquizes, "Can honor set to a leg? No. Or an arm? No. Or take away the grief of a wound? No. What is honor? A word. Who hath it? He that died a Wednesday. Does he feel it? No. Does he hear it? No. 'Tis insensible then. Therefore, I'll none of it." To Falstaff, honor belongs to he that died a Wednesday. It shows up after your death and is valueless because it is insensible to the one who won it. And Shakespeare vividly sets Hotspur on the other side. His vision of honor is acquired through the conquest of others. When Hotspur dies following a man-to-man fight with Prince Hal, he laments, "O Harry, thou hast robbed me of my youth. I better brook the loss of brittle life than those proud titles thou hast won of me." In Hotspur's equation, Hal has now acquired Hotspur's honor and his titles. Honor disappears in defeat and passes to the winner, and Hal has robbed Hotspur of his honor in the process. Coincidentally, Falstaff, who lay down pretending to be dead during Hal's fight with Hotspur, then proceeds to rob Hal of his honor by insisting that Hotspur was not dead at all after Hal killed him, and that it was he who finished him off. And Hal lets him get away with it. Hal does not put all of his stock into the vision of honor being acquired by killing others. But to him, honor is perhaps a product of character, virtue, and perhaps good deeds. As odd as this sounds, if you want to chase this theme a little farther, it might be worth comparing the themes of this play to another Shakespeare play which predates the action of this play by over 1,400 years, Julius Caesar. There too, the concept of honor comes up again and again. I also do a one-man show called Breakneck Julius Caesar, and I've got 5 videos on that topic already. You might start with this one here. And perhaps hit like and subscribe while you're at it so you don't miss any more. So that's I Finally Get Henry IV Part 1. Hopefully your understanding of this bit of background will double your ability to understand what's going on in this play. You'll also want to tune in to catch Shakespeare's History's 10 epic plays at a breakneck pace this Sunday and Monday, November 22nd and 23rd, 2020, all shows at 8 p.m. Central. If you're watching this video after those shows happen, please swing by timmooneyRep.com for all the latest details of the performance schedule, or to book an event for your own school, theater, or conference in person or via the internet. I do these explainer videos just about every week, releasing them on Friday in advance of the coming shows. You can go back and see the first one that I did on Shakespeare's Histories here, which will give you even more insight into the overall arc of these 10 plays. And there, you'll find more videos on lots of Shakespeare stuff. We've also got a Patreon campaign if you'd like to support this work. We are a not-for-profit organization at patreon.com/TimMooneyRep. We have giveaways of lots of swag, books, even drawings for free performances. And this and lots more goodies can be found at timmooneyRep.com. Thanks for watching. See you on the stage.